Searching for answers.
Here are today's top stories.
Been over 24 hours.
And the local news.
What we see are a lot of things that are going on the earth.
This is Art of Heaven News Talk.
Broadcasting live from WHPC studios in Garden City, New York. This is Art of Heaven News Talk, where we deliver global, national, and local news through the lens of faith, oftentimes comparing these stories to Scripture. I'm your host, Johnny Brummett, and joining me today are my co-hosts, pastor and theologian Nathan Gassaway, retired law enforcement and sports fanatic Mike Duty, and certified mental health first aid trainer Carol Duty. If you want to join the conversation, lines are open at 516-572-7440. It's 516-572-7440. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Johnny. Good to be here.
Hey, good to be here.
Hey, Johnny. Good to be here.
All right, so obviously we got to address the biggest news story out there, the Super Bowl this weekend.
Yeah.
Wait, that's happening this weekend?
It's a thing.
Haven't heard.
So anybody got any picks, any dogs in the fight?
Well, I haven't really liked San Francisco since, maybe it was Joe Montana and Jerry Rice were really running the show back then. But I kind of like this quarterback because Purdy seems to be a guy who, one, he's a man of faith, but in some ways an underdog, at least historically. Mr. Irrelevant has become very relevant suddenly. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a little interested in it now.
So this isn't WHPC Sports Talk like at 4 o'clock following this show, but there's a lot of different angles to the Super Bowl that are super interesting to me. Like Brock Purdy, you just mentioned. I mean, the guy was second to last draft pick 2 years ago, I believe, and he was named Mr. Irrelevant, right? And now he's Super Bowl quarterback. So that's pretty cool. That's a very interesting, and both quarterbacks are men of faith. Apparently, Brock Purdy is undoubtedly a strong man of faith, right? Have you noticed?
Yeah, it was funny when you just said irrelevant. I immediately went to David, right? When they were looking for the one that was going to fight Goliath, right? And all the sons were coming through. Nathan, of course, you can quote chapter and verse, so I'll leave that up to you. But as they were coming through, they kept saying, can't be this one.
Well, it's definitely a shout out to the underdog.
Yeah.
David was not the son you would have expected,
Exactly.
Not the tallest, not the strongest, not the oldest.
But he had the heart.
He had the heart, and he ended up becoming king. He moved from shepherd boy to king, from pastor to palace. And it seems like this guy has kind of come up the ranks in maybe a similar way, not exactly the same thing, but now we've got Brock here who is, I have a nephew named Brock, so maybe I like him even partly because of his first name. But I think this is an inspiring individual because, not all of us have been kind of kissed on the mouth by God, so to speak, with all the talents immediately. Mm-hmm. But this guy is really showing what hard work and perseverance and just trust can do.
Yeah, and young. 24, is he?
Yeah, he is.
23, 24. He's young.
24 years old.
And I was just reading in psychology now that the brain doesn't even fully develop to make the kind of decisions he has to make on the field and not be really emotional till you're about 25. So like an old soul even.
Yeah.
Really.
I learned recently that he's sleeping in an apartment with like a roommate. He's not even making that good of money compared to others in his situation right now.
Yeah, it's impressive because he wouldn't have gotten in there probably if there hadn't been so many injuries. He's known for stability and poise, it seems like.
Yeah, he doesn't have the size or even some of the talents that other Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks have or had, but he takes what he has and is able to work it with his offense and with the defense. He's able to use those skills and just do things that maybe make people change their whole idea of what irrelevant means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I do like, he does seem to be pretty forward with his faith. It kind of comes up almost on many of the interviews that he's doing. and inevitably a question is asked about his faith, and he's just very grounded, not boastful, just very humble. And I'm a fan of the underdog, so if I have to have a dog in this race, I'm going to go for San Fran.
Gotcha. I think I'm leaning that way too. He does give all glory to God, he said, for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting because he's quoted saying, "This year for me, it's been Psalm 23."
Yes.
Is that interesting?
We typically talk about that at funerals, right? But that God is leading us, guiding us, protecting us, keeping us, all these kinds of things. Though he walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil because you are with me. And I guess what I would get from that is he's saying, God's with me. Whatever the outcome, God is with me.
I heard that too, Nathan. I saw a quote where he said, I'm on the field and it's crunch time and it's all happening around him, that he really keeps his mind centered on God. And God has a plan, and God will, help him win, or if he doesn't win, it's still God's plan. Like, he does seem very grounded and keeps his mind focused. And a lot of peace comes from that because he knows where his resources come from, and he can maybe take his eyes off himself and really focus on a larger power. So good.
All eyes on Brock Purdy this weekend. So another interesting topic about the Super Bowl is the advertisements this year. I was reading an article that they say that advertisers are saying they are playing it safe and are not trying to be too message heavy. Very interesting. And another Super Bowl expert quoted saying, "The public mood is such that people want to see lighter and more humorous themes right now." I mean, is that interesting?
Well, I think that's right. And I think people are tired of, they're going to a ball game, they want to have some entertainment, maybe be amused, but they don't want someone preaching at them. It isn't the venue really to, bring up all the world's problems, to make political statements and things like that. People are just tired of politicizing everything. And now it's even in the sports arena. So I think it's right to say that people are just, they've had enough. They just want to go out and enjoy a ball game. I'm like that. I don't want to hear 15 million political messages or socio-political messages when I get that every day. Can I watch the game, You said amusing. So what does the Greek and Latin derivative of amusement mean? Well, amusement probably has an Old English derivative, but for contemporary English speakers, whenever you have "a" in front of a word, it means the negation of it. So not, and muse means to think. It just means to not think. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't think. We're probably over-amused in some ways. But to tell you the truth, sometimes we need a break. Amusement is like dessert. It shouldn't be the main course, but my goodness, let's have it sometimes, right?
For sure. Well, and think about it. I read something where 30 seconds of advertisement is $7 million. I don't know if that's correct, but it's 200 times more than it was to get those 30 seconds 20 years ago. So, the folks that are putting these commercials together know that they're paying this kind of money because of the impact or the influence that they can have. So if it's political or socio-political or whatever it is, they're paying for that. So it's really interesting that the public or even the advertisers are saying, let's give us a break and let us be happy and laugh and just enjoy the game.
Exactly. Mike, I mean, don't we watch sports to escape the terrible news out there?
That is absolutely why I will sit down on the couch and I will sit and flip through the stations, and typically I'm watching a game of a team that I support, but sometimes I'll just watch a game just to watch a game and just to have that escapism and not have to be inundated with politics and just all the other kind of woes of the world. And if you could sit down there for 2 hours and have that time and have that amusement, and I think it's good for the soul. And I think when they ruin it, or they ruin it when they start putting political messages in there, or just trying to force opinions upon you, whatever their opinion happens to be.
Yeah. And let it, it's not a passive time that Michael is sitting watching a game. There's a lot of screaming and yelling and hollering and having a great time. So even that, just enjoying the game and rooting for the players that you want to see do well, and it's just a great release just to, focus on that for a little while, not the cares of the world.
I mean, sports in general, it's just a great outlet. You watch not always necessarily what's happening in the game, but sometimes it's the by stories that are happening, and you're hearing these backstories of certain players and where they came from and what they accomplished and what they overcame. It's just interesting to have that and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yep.
It's a microcosm of life, sports.
I have one more question about this topic, and I'm going to direct it to you, Carol, because these advertising experts are saying they're going to play it safe and not trying to be too message heavy, and that the public mood is one that wants lighter and more humorous things and all that. Is this because after everything we've been through in the past couple of years, with the whole kneeling for the national anthem to 2020 and everything, is America not ready for that? And is our mental state not there enough to hear those things during the Super Bowl game?
I would agree with Nathan. I think we're just exhausted. Personally, I probably be watching a Hallmark movie on Sunday and not the game, because that's not really what I watch. Sorry, guys, but that's what I'll be doing. But, you come home from a long day and you just need a break, and you just don't want to be all wound up again for whatever the reason may be. It could be, gas prices. I don't know. It really could be anything. And why get all riled up again? There's just comfort in a low-key state where you're not feeling these highs and lows of emotions.
Interesting. So we got a caller calling in. See what they have to say about this subject. Hi, you're on Art of Heaven News Talk. What's your name? Where are you from?
Hi, it's Dave from the Franklin Square.
Awesome. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, Dave.
Hi.
Good, thanks. I hate to put a little Debbie Downer and, for lack of a better word, play the devil's advocate, but if you really think about it, football is a microcosm of war, of power. And I hope you guys give me the freedom of speech, but in a way, we're collectively looking at this sort of satanic worship as, this is just something to pass the time. And, there's so much money and billionaires and the worship of idols, the worship of an athlete. Yes, they could kick a ball in a soccer net, or Tiger Woods could hit a ball in a hole. You think about how simple it is, but yet we worship these people. We worship these people more than we worship holy or spiritual values. The idea that it's on a Sunday, the origins of the
Dave, I think that you've got some interesting insight there, because you're right. To worship anyone other than God, that's idolatry. The truth is, though, with sports, like many things, in and of themselves, they're morally neutral, but they can be misused and abused. It's kind of like, the wrench I, loosen my pipe with, I can beat somebody to death with it. It can be misused. And what we hope is that something that started out very benign, some people that have some fun and enjoy life, doesn't get turned into those things. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in. We're in the world, not of the world. I hear what you're saying, but I would say that take, for example, some people are going to seize this moment. There's going to be an ad given, a Christian ad of good news, not bad news, to bring us all down. They've bought a spot on the Super Bowl. I think maybe God will use that. Also, or of course, they're getting a lot of criticism for it. I think we've got some players like Brock Purdy who is pointing to Jesus. So I guess what I would say, the only pushback I give you, and you're certainly within your rights to share this, is that sports in and of themselves are probably morally neutral, but it's just like any other tool or vehicle. You can use it or misuse it, and oftentimes it is misused. So I hear what you're saying, buddy.
Thank you for that insight, Dave. I have another question from the chat here from Sam, and he's asking, how much weight should we give someone such as Taylor compared to many others, including spiritual leaders among us? And it's interesting because there is the whole debate about the Jesus advertisement that stirred up controversy last year. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the pop stars in the halftime show.
Well, yeah, again, this is not a religious event. Now, so Taylor Swift may be overshadowing everybody in the Super Bowl at this point. Of course, I think if she's trying to step into the boots of Jesus, they're a little to her sandals. It's a little too big for her. But, you know, it's interesting. There are a lot of things that draw people's attention. The truth is, human nature is we're drawn to people who are elite in many ways, who are beautiful, who are whatever, talented. And we need to be careful about that. Maybe Dave's point is that we need to watch out for, we're kind of prone to idolatry, so we should watch that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're listening to Art of Heaven News Talk on 90.3 WHPC. I'm Johnny Brummett here with Nathan Gassaway, Mike Duty, and Carol Duty. So I'm going to move on to our next topic. And this one I have a soundbite for, but right before I play that, it's about the Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin. That is kind of one of the biggest stories right now because he released this interview last night. And we got a couple things to cover over the past week. So he released a video stating why he did the interview, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and play here.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice.
So I watched the interview, and I found it entertaining, amusing, and it did make me think though, Nathan. But no, I liked it. I watched the interview, and I found that Putin is a historian practically. So he first started off the interview with telling the whole entire history of Russia and Ukraine, and Tucker fell back and listened to it, and he actually started the interview saying, "Tucker, aren't you a history major originally?" And he said yes. So he went through the whole history. It was very laid back. It wasn't a tense, argumentative.
Well, one thing about Vladimir Putin, he is a savvy politician. He's a sharp guy. There's no denying that. Now, I'm not going to speak to his morality. I don't know the man. But what I will say is this. He's a savvy politician. And he did try to bring historical links between Ukraine and Russia, but part of that has been widely panned, at least by popular media, to suggest that, he's using it as propaganda, meaning this justifies an invasion, so on and so forth. The other thing is that he keeps using this phrase denazifying, like that he's trying to take the Nazi out of the Ukrainians, so to speak, something left over maybe from Hitler. And it's things like this that make people question. Now, he is cool as a cucumber, that guy. There's no doubt. I think he's charismatic, like many politicians. But I think, like with all, we need to analyze it carefully. But what I do like is that is another side. This is what media should do. They shouldn't deplatform people. They actually should respect the intelligence of the audiences to try to make good decisions. And no doubt a lot of people make bad decisions and don't analyze very well. But I think it is good to hear both sides of the story. But that doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form I think that he's necessarily the right side or something like that. It just means that, as with all savvy politicians, you need to be very careful as you listen to them and know that there's usually three sides to every story. Their side, and the real side. And who knows what that is? God knows.
So he blamed it on a coup, right? He blamed it on a coup going on in southeastern Ukraine because Tucker kept pressing, what is the reason you started invading 2 years ago? And he blamed it on a coup going on in southeastern Ukraine.
Yeah, I didn't see the whole interview, so I can't speak on that. I did see portions, and my takeaway was, and I agree with Nathan 100%, he did the interview for a purpose, and it is Tucker Carlson's job as a journalist to kind of grab all sides. President Zelensky's been interviewed by you name it. He's been, in the States several times being interviewed on any mainstream media or some cable TV, and getting his side of the story out. And, Vladimir Putin, for whatever you think about him, I guess he deserves to have his side of the story, although as I was watching him, not really believing much of what he was saying. I just thought it was a lot of propaganda.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting man, a learned man, and he is a great politician. But, this war, there's been a lot of atrocities committed in the war. Wars typically have those kinds of things, but we don't want to overlook those. Carlson was criticized by a lot of media. He a lot of times is criticized no matter what he does, but they didn't feel like he was very tough on Putin, like asking really hard questions. Now, it may have been that he was just allowing the man to speak, but some journalists said he wasn't asking tough enough questions. He wasn't pressing things like war crimes or things of that nature. So that was an issue, I think, that was raised by many.
Interesting, yeah. So another political story that we'll touch base on right now is the Tom Suozzi and Mazi Pilip debate last night. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Art of Heaven News Talk on 90.3 WHPC. So it was heated. If you caught that, I mean, there was guns blazing, and I liked both sides. They came strong, What are your thoughts?
I think debates in general have just kind of devolved into something that is really noise. Whoever's screaming the loudest, whoever tries to have the most put downs or the quote of the night, that's what they're hoping to kind of hang a hat on. The purpose of a debate is to hear your position on a particular topic, and both parties or both people should have solid evidence or information to present to either change your mind. And I think you're not getting that nowadays. And screaming at that point, I'm tuning out.
Well, just a reminder for anyone listening out there, this is a special election held on Tuesday, February 13th, and go out there, vote. There is early voting that begins Saturday, February 3rd to February 11th. So vote. I mean, what does Scripture say about voting, Nathan?
Well, I think we're free to follow our consciences.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But do our research, which is what you said before. There's three sides to every story, right? And you want to, do your research and not be led astray, but look at all points and do your own homework.
Yeah. And realize that politicians at the end of the day are not going to run my life. I'm in control of my life. I'm gonna be involved, and I'm definitely gonna play my part and vote. Mm-hmm. But I'm not gonna get all riled up like the world is gonna end because somebody is in office or somebody isn't, right? I have one more story here that I'd like everybody's take on. Okay, an article was just released today about married people. It is titled "Married People Are Living Their Best Life," and they are claiming through this study that married people are reported having a higher well-being. It's very interesting. I mean, there's so many statistics and facts within the realm of marriage that they've studied.
Well, life outcomes just seem to be better for married people. That is to say, they do better financially, they tend to do better emotionally, they tend to do better physically, they live longer, they have better outcomes with children. In fact, Harvard University did an 80-year study. It's one of the biggest longitudinal studies that's ever been done, very robust, and it found that the number one predictor of happiness in people and longevity is tied directly to the depth of relationships and the number of relationships that they have, which makes sense because God created us as communal creatures. And certainly marriage, having an ally with you who can support you emotionally, physically, financially, who can encourage you, who can correct you, who can do life with you. I think sharing life together and experiences just adds to happiness and pays a lot of dividends. So I think the study is exactly right.
So it does sound like marriage is blessed by God, but what's the reason, Nathan, that in the Bible, doesn't it say it's better to be single?
Well, Paul says that he's speaking to a very specific group in the church at Corinth, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and he's saying, I wish you guys could all be like me. He says, because, he's traveling around, and of course, he's suffering a lot. He's being persecuted, beaten, all these things. He says, I wish you could all be like me and be single. But I don't think he was saying that should be the rule. What he was saying is insofar as evangelism is concerned, and that kind of really hard life of going from one place to the other, it might be better not to be tethered to someone else, because you're either dragging them along or leaving them behind. So I think the rule is we're to be fruitful and multiply, that it's a good thing to find a wife or a spouse, and that God, that's the primary design. But there's nothing wrong with singleness. You can live a whole happy life being single. Just have some friends.
I also don't think singleness means lonely, right? Paul had people that he was constantly in community with, and we know loneliness is a very current and real issue, and the U.S. Surgeon General has said it's like the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Like, loneliness really has an effect on your health and your well-being and a lot of things. So, yes.
So if you're single, have deep relationships, friends.
Yes.
But we happen to have a married couple in the building on the show today. So what are your last final thoughts here, Mike, Carol?
So when I first
I'm right here.
When I first saw the article, my initial reaction was, of course that is, because that happens to be our relationship, and it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Good answer.
Amen to that.
Great answer. He's not in trouble. Thank you for tuning in to Art of Heaven News Talk, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Johnny Brummett, and I've been here with Nathan Gassaway, Mike Duty, and Carol Duty. Check us every Friday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. God bless.